So today we're making salsa. So I have got fresh jalapeños from the garden. Now today I am making this for my brother-in-law. I'll call him my brother-in-law. And he is not a fan. He does not like hot, spicy food. So if you take a jalapeno and cut out all this vein and take out all the seeds, it becomes the heat of a bell pepper. So there'll be no heat, but all the jalapeno flavor. So that's how you control your heat. Normally I would leave, you know, a little bit of the vein and a little bit of the seeds, but for him it's going to be a nice clean pepper. And that's how I'm going to do this cup full of jalapenos, just taking all that out. I forgot to mention I am wearing these blue gloves. Make sure when you're handling jalapenos that you have vinyl gloves or surgical gloves, whatever, rubber gloves, because you will burn for a couple of days getting all the juices onto your fingers. So when you're cutting your jalapeno peppers, I like to cut them in little fine thin strips and then cut them into tiny pieces. You don't want to get a big hunk of this. Even though this, I've taken the veins and the seeds out, you still just want a little bit of that jalapeno flavor in every bite. So just a super nice fine chop. So you can see those are really fine bits. Can you see them? Little fine bits. And we do about a cup of those. So for this mild form of salsa, I went a little more than a cup and a half on the bell peppers and a little less than a cup on the jalapeno peppers. So, you know, as long as you end up with the same amount, you're good. So I just throw all this stuff into a large pot, because everything goes into the salsa and then you heat it up. So I just start with all my chopping and get that into a pot. I'll do the onions and garlic next. So onto the onions, we need about 2.5 cups of onions. So I'm guessing this is about a medium-sized onion, 3 of these. These are fresh from our garden as well. So if you're new to chopping and knife work, I'm no knife expert, but I just kind of peel the onion, cut the end off here. Peel all your dark skin off, and then I make a grid in the onion. Holy cow, we got thick skin on our onions. Okay, so make sure you get all this brown skin off. It's tough and not good. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll come back once I've got this peeled. Okay, so I successfully peeled my onion, and you'll notice I've left the little hairy bottom on there. So the way I was shown, I'm going to flip my board because I got some dirt on here. The way I was shown to chop an onion is to just make a grid pattern. And I'm not cutting all the way through, I'm just cutting to near the bottom. So you slice it one way, and then you slice it 90 degrees the other way. So whether this is the easiest way to do it or not, it works for me. So then you can either do it as a whole, or sometimes I like to go back to my grid line, cut it in half, then you can sit it flat, and then you just do your fine chop from there. And it may bring you to tears. It's all right. Doesn't make you less of a cook. There, so you just have a little bit left. And you have all this nice cubed onion. And then just measure it out because you want about 2.5 cups. By the way, if you don't want to go through all this rigmarole to get these onions all cubed up, you can use a food processor. But I do it by hand just because you get a little chunkier salsa. But if you want to do like a taco sauce or something like that where you don't care what size it is, then go ahead and use the food processor. It's way easier. So the last thing I have to chop is 6 garlic cloves. But we get like huge garlic in our garden. Like one of these is worth at least, I would say, 3 garlic cloves. So I'm just gonna do 2 of these big cloves from our garden. So the easiest way I've found to chop garlic is to just slice off the little hard bit and then just give it a smack. Squish it. And then it just, all the paper just peels right off. And then of course our garlic is a little big, so I cut it down to some bite-sized pieces to put in the garlic press. If you have a handy dandy press, you can use this. And I just put it in this bowl here. Just give it a squish. Oh, you can't even see it. There. Just give it a squish. And I mean, a clove of garlic is just roughly a teaspoon of garlic. So go until you have about 6 teaspoons of garlic. Ooh, it's nice and juicy. That's the difference between fresh garlic and store-bought garlic. So keep going till you got about 6 teaspoons. So that's it for the chopping. I just threw in all the peppers, onions, garlic, and now we'll do the tomatoes. Okay, so for the salsa, we're moving on to the portion where we're doing the tomatoes, and we're gonna take the skins off the tomatoes. So in here I have a pot of boiling water. So it's been boiling hard for a minute, and I'm just gonna throw in, so for my tomatoes, I have an 8-cup thing here. So I'm just gonna throw half the tomatoes into the boiling water, and it only takes a few seconds, and then they start to split. So then I'm gonna take them out with a slotted spoon and put them into an ice bath. This is an ice bath here. So as soon as I see them start to split, I will pull them out. So this is how quick it happens. So you can probably see. Okay, my battery's running out. I'll be back. Okay, so now we're gonna, I've got my tomatoes, and they've split. As you can see, the skin's starting to peel. So I'll just show you with this one, basically what I do. So you just, the skin very easily peels off. And you just have to take out, I just use a little paring knife and just cut out the core. So I just take out that hard part in the middle. That's gone. And then I just dice the tomato. It's still nice and hard because it was only in the bath for less than a minute. So I just cut it into little small cubes and stick it in here. And generally, you saw how I had this like kind of a rounded full with the tomatoes, and that will usually break down once you cube up your tomatoes to 8 cups. So I'm just gonna go with the rest of them and I'll be back. So when you're cleaning your tomatoes, if you see a spot that doesn't look good, this had just like a little black spot on the outside, and then on the inside you have this. Gross. So any tomatoes that you pick that you don't go, oh my god, I want to eat that, throw them away. You don't want to can with those. Just a tip. Okay, we've got our 8 cups of cubed up tomatoes. So that is going to go into our big pot with our onions and all our chopped up stuff. So the next thing to go in is pickling salt. So it's 2 tablespoons of pickling salt, 2 teaspoons of cumin, and 2 teaspoons of pepper. So some people use, typically you use black pepper, but I like to use something called long pepper, which I brought back from Calgary. So use whatever, use black pepper. But my secret ingredient is long pepper. So the next ingredients is a 1/3 cup of sugar and a 1/3 of a cup of vinegar. Perfect. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to add is I use the Primo brand. You can use anything, but this is the one I like. Tomato sauce at 680 milliliters. So you can put that in. And then I've got 2 of the small cans of tomato paste to go in there. So the thing about canning is to make sure that you're super well organized before you start. So now I've got all the ingredients into the pot, but I'm not going to start it until I have all my canning stuff ready. So I'll get the bath going first and get that getting up to a boil, get my lids ready, get my jars in the oven. But the salsa actually goes quite quickly. So I'll just let this sit until I have everything ready. So I'll come back to you when I have everything ready. Okay, so first things first, I've got my canning bath going. So that's been going for about 10 minutes. Takes a while to get that to boil, so you want to make sure you got lots of time to get that to a boil. I've got my jars in at 225. They're gonna sterilize. That takes at least 20 minutes. So I've also got my lids in, so the water is hot and steamy but not boiling. And so in the next few minutes I'm gonna start the salsa. So I am just gonna turn this on, and I'm gonna bring it to basically a hard boil, and then turn it down a little bit and just let it simmer for 10-15 minutes. And you want to get your salsa to a real good boil where if you stir it, it just keeps boiling. So it's still boiling even after I stir. So that's good. So now I'll just turn it down slightly, just slightly. And now it's going to go for 10 minutes. And you'll see the tomatoes will really start to break down. Everything will break down to be almost liquid. So now I'll set the timer for 10 minutes. So you're just going to want to keep stirring it for the next 10 minutes. Just every minute or so, give it a stir. And just keep it boiling on a, lower boil. So the big canning pot has come to a boil. So I'm going to turn it down and move it forward on the stove because I have this upper thing that doesn't allow me to take the cans straight out, the jars straight out, and you want to be able to lift your jars straight out without tipping them so that you keep a good seal. So I'm just going to move that forward. Everything's kind of coming together nicely. You can see there's hardly any chunks of tomato. There's my 10 minutes. Turn that off. I'm just going to go a couple more minutes till, yeah, just a couple more minutes. But it's pretty much there. It's the thickness I like. The tomatoes are all broke down. You're just seeing the peppers and the onions left. So just a couple more minutes and then I'll start canning. Okay, I'm gonna take you through the canning process. So I'm just gonna turn my salsa to minimum just so it stays super, super hot. So I'm going to take a jar out of the oven. Use this keeps the lip from getting any salsa on it. And I'm just going to fill the jar to within a 1/4 inch of the top. So there we go. Then I grab a hot lid, put that on, grab a collar and my hot pad. So you just want to put the collar on finger tight, that's it. And then I put the jar straight into the canning bath. So the canning bath has enough water to be at least an inch over top of the jars. And that's it. I'm going to do it for the rest of them. So I'm at least halfway through the salsa. I've got my jars in there. I've turned it up to max. And we will set it for 10 minutes for the bath. While I'm waiting the 10 minutes, I just have this still on low, but it's still like hot as molten lava. So I'm just going to leave that on low, and in 5 minutes I'll start canning again. But I want the jars nice and hot going into the bath. You notice I spilled a little on the side of the jar. I was taking out the sleeve. So anyways, just have a little wet paper towel to clean that off in case you spill any on the lip. You need a clean lip for a good seal. If you happen to get your jar a little too full, just take a plastic spoon and take it out. Now I'm taking out my cans and putting them over here where they'll sit for 24 hours. These jars are busy popping. You'll see there's some condensation on top. That's perfectly fine. That'll evaporate. I'm just putting the last of the jars that I just filled into the bath. So you'll see when I See the bubbles coming up? That's what you want to happen, the bubbles coming out of the jar when you put them into the bath. That's why we don't over tighten the lids. We actually just have a very little bit left over, and it made 13 jars, which is pretty good. I was a little chintzy on the fresh tomatoes. Could have probably had a couple more tomatoes in there, but that's okay. So this is our sample. We're gonna let that cool, break out the bag of chips, and see how we did. I'm gonna just have a little sample right now to see if there's any heat, because Gord doesn't like heat. And there's not, there's a very, very, very slight tingle on my tongue. I think Gord will be happy. So the salsa is all done. Now comes the fun part. The taste tester. So this is where we look at the thickness, which is nice. Taste. Perfecto. No heat, Gord. No heat. Hope your salsa turns out just as good. Peace out. Okay, I lied. After a few chips, there is a little tingle, but you need a little tingle. Just a little.